There's some breaking news in our national lead in the investigation into the Uvalde school shooting, which I believe was 7 weeks ago today. For the very first time, we're seeing a portion of the surveillance video from inside the hallway at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde. The video is, frankly, horrifying. It was just published by the Austin American-Statesman newspaper. This is a 4-minute edited clip. It shows a sliver of the police response. This comes ahead of the Texas House Committee's plan to show the hour-long video to the victims' families and the public on Sunday. Let's bring in CNN's Rosa Flores. Rosa, walk us through what we're going to see here.
You know, Jake, before we show you this video, we need to share with our viewers that this is an edited video produced by the Austin American-Statesman. It is about 4 minutes long. It does not include the full 77 minutes of the account of what happened. Now, the Austin American-Statesman decided to edit out the children, the voices of the children that were in this video, and then CNN has decided to edit out the audio of the gunfire. We should be very clear here. This is a very graphic video. It could trigger people watching this in our audience. So you have to be very careful if you decide to watch this video. Now, what you're going to see is you're going to see the gunman enter the school with that rifle. He's going to enter, he's going to make a right, go down the hall. There's a child there who's observing all of this. Then the gunman starts and opens fire. Then you're going to see that hallway eventually fill with police officers. But the video starts off at the beginning when the gunman crashes near the school. It's difficult to find words following that 4 minutes. We are starting to get word from families, the families of the victims who have seen this video. They are very upset. Some of them taking to Facebook, saying that this is the opposite of what the family wanted. I'm going to quote here, "Our hearts are shattered all over again." And Jake, this video is coming just days before the Texas House Investigative Committee was planning to have a private meeting with the families of the victims to share with them the full 77 minutes of the hallway video and also a fact-finding report, and also answer their questions about the investigation. So that's what the families were preparing themselves for, to have that conversation in private, to be able to express their frustrations, to ask questions. And here we are again, sharing this story of another yet piecemeal account of what happened that day.
And Rosa, as you and I have discussed for the last 7 weeks, we need to remind our viewers that the very first thing the police and the politicians did after this horrifying massacre was praise themselves and how brave they were and how courageous the response was. That was the first thing, and it's only because the families and journalists were asking questions that we now have an accurate picture of what happened. Does the committee plan to release this video, the full 77 minutes, earlier now that the Austin American-Statesman has published this edited version online?
You know, I talked to a source close to the committee, and this source tells me that they plan to do what they were planning to do, which is release this video to the families first on Sunday in Uvalde, so in their own town, and to answer their questions, and that's what they continue to do. The chairman of the committee, Representative Justin Burrows, actually tweeting just moments ago, expressing his disappointment of this leak, because they were really hoping to take the families through the entire video and not subject them to yet another edited version of reality.
All right,
Jake.
Rosa Flores, thank you so much. Let's discuss with our law enforcement experts and analysts here. Andrew McCabe, let me start with you. It's heavily edited. We have to remind people.
That's right.
The Austin American-Statesman edited out the sounds of the children. CNN has taken out the sounds of the gunfire. So as horrifying as that was, the actual video was much worse.
Yeah.
What's your response?
It is hard to characterize this as anything other than a complete disaster. It's a total mess from the crisis response perspective. From the very first moments when police officers arrive on the scene, you see 2, maybe 3 go down the hall. The other 4 stay inexplicably at the end of the hall, behind cover. Even the Texas State active shooter response for school-based officers training that every one of these officers has to have had by this point in time makes it clear that you take everybody that you have when you arrive on that scene and you go downrange to address the threat. That is not what they did with the bodies they had. And then the mistakes compound from there. You see one after another as we watch the video.
Commissioner Ramsey, obviously, it is a difficult job being a police officer. And I don't want to pretend that, like, any one of us here, with the exception of the FBI agent and the police officer, would run into fire. But what's your response when you see that 74 minutes of police not trying to take out this gunman?
Well, I mean, I have to be honest. When I first saw that, I was embarrassed. As a police officer, I was actually embarrassed to watch that take place. I mean, it is contrary to everything you're trained to do. And granted, it's a dangerous job. I understand that. I've been under fire 3 times in my career. And so I know that it's not a good feeling, believe me. But you do what you have to do. And they did not. I mean, those first officers on the scene in about 3 minutes, and only 2 of them or 3 walked down the hall. 2 of them stayed back. I don't know what the heck they called themselves doing, staying back that far. You know, 2 did meet gunfire, okay. But you regroup and you have to go back.
That's right.
And you have to do what you have to do, period.
That's the job.
That's the job. And, you know, let me remind you, I mean, this is not pro bono work. You get paid to do this and you volunteered to do it. You didn't get drafted to become a cop. It's part of what you do.
And let's remind our viewers, 19 children.
Yeah.
And 2 teachers killed in this. What was? First of all, I can't even believe there was actually a moment there where an officer
guy
was putting on
sanitizes.
Hand
lotion.
sanitizer.
Yeah, he said,
Hand
I mean-
sanitizer so he didn't get COVID.
Yeah.
presumably.
I mean, off air, I was swearing because I literally could not believe what I was watching. I've seen a lot of bad videos. And there's a couple takeaways. And one is, where the heck is the command authority? Like, I'm looking at a lot of guys who look like they're waiting for, a Nike store to open. Yeah, like, it's like, there's like, do we have something better to do? But the second is that, of course, the children. Look, we have a proliferation of a certain kind of weapon that is going to kill children, going to kill people, but children in these schools very quickly. So your standard of success is, can I make things less bad as a law enforcement officer? And what we now know is there were shots in the delayed time, so it wasn't like this was over. And secondly, we don't know who bled out. We don't know if some of those kids would have survived had they gotten medical care quicker. And that's the frustrating thing. I get it. These weapons are hard, but we know what to do when this happens. Time.
And Carrie Cordero, at one point during the video, an officer can be heard saying, quote, they're making entry, but they weren't making entry. Remember, initially we were told all these things that were not true about he was barricaded in, he was locked in, they couldn't get in. It's so infuriating because the police and the politicians in Uvalde have been lying to the parents of these kids for 7 weeks.
Look, this is clear. There is no excuse. All of us have worked with law enforcement. I've spent my entire professional career working with and around law enforcement officers. There is no excuse for the holding back. When we look at the timeline that's laid out in the video, this should have been over in 3 to 4 minutes. They were on the premises, at least half a dozen officers. At the 3-minute mark, by 4 minutes, they were retreating and running away. We don't know what was going on in the minds of those officers who were in the hallway and decided not to act when there were children under gunfire. But from my perspective, every single one depicted in that video should turn in their badge. Yeah.
What more do you want to know, Commissioner Ramsey? What other questions do you have after watching that?
I tell you, that video pretty much says it all, to be honest with you. They just cowardice. I don't know what you want to call it whatever you want, but I'm telling you, that should not have happened like that. It shouldn't. I was commissioner of Philly for 8 years. I buried 8 police officers that were killed in the line of duty. 5 of them within a 9-month period. 3 shot to death, 2 responding to priority 1 calls. Yeah. I know what heroism looks like, and that ain't it.
Yeah.
And you just had 4 people in your studio here that really did demonstrate what policing's all about. This is an embarrassment, period.
And let's not forget that there is a leadership angle to this. We don't know what's in the head of those officers, but we do know some things. And when they did finally make entry at one end of the hall, the half a dozen or so standing at the back end of the hall seemed surprised by that. There was no leadership on this